you have that would help to resolve that issue. We'll give them Sir White Carter 5 minutes because that's a little bit more involved.
Well, it's hard to narrow it down to one issue because I think we have many. But when we're talking about Western North Carolina, one of the saddest things is that we are number 3 in the nation as far as hunger is concerned. So I would say that food sustainability is one of those issues that needs to be taken care of, and we have some excellent organizations that are helping with that. Education, I think, is extremely important. We know that this is not the first time that Buncombe County has been through some of the problems that we've had. I mean, we've seen the Ball plant, Gerber plant, Beacon all closed down, and for many families that was a generational thing. You got through high school and then you went to work at the same plant as your mama or your grandmama. The problem is that those jobs are gone, even for mama and grandmama. So what do? Well, for many families, they went to AV Tech and got retrained. We have wonderful training programs. They went on to UNCA and got a degree. Or they went to AV Tech and worked through AV Tech to get a degree at Western or NC State or some other colleges around here. But they were able to move on and get good jobs. But they could not have done that if they had not gotten a good education in the early years. One of the things that is fabulous this year is that we had an 80% high school graduation rate in the state. And that didn't happen within the last 2 years, only the last 2 years. That began back in the pre-K programs that we are now seeing the fruition of that. And that's why we need to be sure that our education is funded and fully funded. Secondly, I mentioned earlier, we have some of the most beautiful mountains, rivers, streams of any place in the world. And people come here and spend their money here. A lot of people here have jobs as trail guides. How many whitewater rafting companies have you seen? I mean, a large part of our economy comes from our environment, and we cannot allow it to be put at risk. A lot of people have talked about fracking. I'm against fracking, but fracking is, quite frankly, not really anything that's going to happen in Western North Carolina. But there are other things that have been put at risk. The last thing is we have got to bring in jobs. Buncombe County has got the lowest unemployment rate of Western North Carolina. And it's still too high. We have some jobs that are coming in, but there are more ways of bringing jobs in. One of it is, I've talked about 2 of them earlier, but I'm also going to talk about the fact that we have in AV Tech a couple of wonderful programs. One of them is the Small Business Incubator that helps us grow small businesses that will employ local people right here in Buncombe County and Western North Carolina. The second thing is that we can provide some private-public partnerships in some training programs here. Linamar, they came here, and as has been mentioned earlier, they couldn't find the skilled workers that they needed. So what have they done? They are now working with AV Tech, and they are working with Blue Ridge Community College, and they are training people and helping pay for that so that we will have skilled workers here. We have other ways of bringing in businesses, but we have got to have the educated populace, the skilled populace, for people to want to come here. We cannot destroy our environment, we cannot destroy our educational system, or we can hang it up as far as bringing in businesses. And quite frankly, I want to see new businesses grown here, I want to see new businesses coming here, and I want to see one of the lowest unemployment rates in North Carolina, and we can do that in Buncombe County.
You know, this current economic recession or depression or crisis, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, it's not good, that we're in, our community has struggled, like many across the nation, but even when times were good, people in the mountains struggled. Our incomes on average were about 60% median family income of what they would have been in the Charlotte metro or Raleigh area. The cost of housing in our community is comparable or more expensive in places like that. So if you look at our cost of living being high, our average wages being lower, even when times were good and even when our employment rate was 4%, a lot of people in our community struggle. And that's been a history of the mountains for many generations. Partly that's because state capital is so far away. And if you took all the people in western North Carolina, we would not match the number of people that are in Wake County or Mecklenburg County. And unfortunately, resources often go to where voters are, because this is not a partisan thing. This is based on political practicalities. So, I think there's some things that western North Carolina can do to encourage economic development and economic growth. Number one, we've got to work with our brothers and sisters in eastern North Carolina so that the Piedmont, which is a critical part of our state, does not run the state of North Carolina, because they have enough votes in the General Assembly of everybody in the Piedmont from Charlotte to Raleigh vote together. Doesn't really matter what the folks up here in the West and the East say. So that's not a partisan matter. The second is the resources that we do have. We've got to get, as a community, on the same page. So when the state has $300 million that are willing to spend on highway projects in this community, for example, of I-26 connector, we need to be ready to grab those dollars and go forward. And if we're, as a community, fighting and not on the same page, then other communities will take that, because, as I've said earlier, we have strained resources across the state, and the state's not going to put our money in a piggy bank and just leave it there. The second thing is that our economy predominantly is a small business economy here. That's where most of our jobs are created, and that's partly because most of our population growth, really all of our population growth, this is even true in Buncombe County, comes from in-migrations. Our births and deaths are about equivalent, so all the population growth that we've had, and in Buncombe County, it's been about the state average, and other mountain counties, it's not been quite that much, has come from people moving here from somewhere else. And what they do, they love Buncombe County, they love Asheville, they love this region, but then they try to find a job and they can't. And so what do? They start a small business, because that's the only way they can support themselves. So, I think we need to do a better job to support our small businesses, and that's why tax reform is so important, because that way it benefits everyone, from the largest corporation to the smallest business, and you're not picking sides and playing favorites. And then finally, on an educational standpoint, and this is not entirely the state's fault, but at the community college level and the university level, there's no incentive for campuses to work together. The system is structured for them not to work together, because they're all fighting for resources. So, structurally, in my theory, I have any more time left if I talk too long?
You got a minute.
My theory, and it's not a theory, it's really reality, modern state government was formed in the aftermath of the Great Depression. We're living with that same structure today. I think we need to reform the structure of state government to reflect the needs and challenges that we face in the 21st century. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the UNCA Board of Trustees, administration, or anyone affiliated with UNCA, but I will tell you, Asheville is a college town with a very small college. We could have a 20,000 student university here if we wanted that. That's not where UNCA wants to go and wants to be, and we have a special thing in having the liberal arts university and having a public liberal arts place where you can get very high quality education that you would obtain at a private school at a public school price. But we need to get the turf battles out of the way and say, we're by far, this is not a state allocation decision. If Western Carolina, which they moved off our UNCA campus located in Biltmore Park, but if UNCA Western wanted to have undergraduates in Asheville, they want to have graduate programs, we're not going to do anything to stop that. In the past, there's been a lot of wasted resources because of that. The same is true at the community college level. So at the end of the day, I think if we get that structure right, then we can determine, do we need more resources or to get the job done? But first, we've got to prove to our people that the existing dollars that we're spending is spent in the most efficient way possible.
So I don't get to vote on this like they do. As a Register of Deeds, I won't have the ability to vote on how we should change things on that front. But I do think education and the lack of funding to education lately is one of the most important things that is going to affect generations to come. And we need to be responsible about how we're funding education, how we're funding places like the YWCA, and government has a function in funding important things that we need to be concerned about. What I can do is run my office as efficiently as possible. So is what we have done in an effort to cut government, we've been able to cut government spending in a lot of ways. We've reduced our budget by hundreds of thousands of dollars in an effort to funnel money towards more important government services, like education. I'm proud to say that that's taken, government needs to be more innovative. So bring in things like credit card transactions, and so people, so my staff can now process things faster and easier than they used to. People don't necessarily have to go into the Register of Deeds office anymore. They can do it from home. That's innovative service that makes us more responsible and makes government more efficient. Things like e-recording documents. I know it's kind of dorky, so is my world, but realistically, if you can stay at home or stay at your office, if you live in Black Mountain, or if you're trying to record a document in Weaverville, you don't have to drive to Buncombe County government offices anymore to record a document. You can do it from the comfort of your office or the comfort of your home. And that's what innovative government looks like. We've been able to not hire 5 positions back in my office. We're doing more with less, and it's what responsible government needs to look like, is being responsible in places like the Register of Deeds office, so we can continue to fund things like education and Smart Start and things that we've seen completely get dismantled by the Republican legislature this year.
Thank you to all our candidates. We started a little bit late, but we're going to finish on time. But I do want to give each of the candidates, and Mary, if you'd like to say a few words in closing on Pat's behalf, 2 minutes to just say a closing.